Everyone at Queen's Park was aware that a number of members of the club were involved in the Great War, but there was very little detailed knowledge of the extent of that involvement. Early in 2015, the club became increasingly conscious of the fact that the centenary of the major battles of the Great War would be coming up between then and November 2018, and a decision was taken to launch a research project. First of all, to form a complete picture, or as complete a picture as possible, of how the war affected the club, but also to find out more about the 216 men who were known to have served in the forces in the war, and 29 of whom were known at the time to have lost their lives. Response to the project was very good from families of the men who had enlisted and also from members of the club, and a great deal of interesting information became available very quickly, such as photographs of the Queen's Park tours to Denmark and Sweden in June of 1914, the last summer of peace. This information has been put into a series of leaflets and pamphlets which are available on the official Queen's Park website and provide general information, but also information about the club's battlefront heroes such as Eddie Garvey, Walter Coulter, Ralph Risk and Peter Moody.
As the 1913-14 season came to a close, the Queen's Park team embarked on the club's 5th Continental tour to Denmark and Sweden. The tour party, consisting of 14 players, 6 club officials and a team trainer, exuded good humour and bonhomie. As one Evening Times reporter noted, "The voyage was enjoyed most thoroughly by as happy and brotherly a crowd of boys as ever wore the world-famous colours of the old club." Among them was Eddie Garvey, a versatile player on the field and the life and soul of the party off it, on account of his sense of humour and his ability to entertain the tourists on a wide range of musical instruments. But he was to take on a more serious role only a few months later, as Britain went to war. By December, it was reported that 71 members and players from Queen's Park had enlisted for service. The same newspaper commended the players' sense of duty, stating, "It is singularly appropriate that the oldest amateur football club now playing what is termed first-class football, and the premier club in Scotland, should show a record unequalled by any other club."
In total, at least 226 members and players, whether former, present or future, from Queen's Park eventually enlisted for service during the war. And they enlisted in a variety, the full variety of regiments and battalions, but without question the regiment which is most associated with the enlistments from Queen's Park is the Highland Light Infantry. At least 50 Queen's Park members and players served at one time or another with the Highland Light Infantry, and within that 50, at least 30 of them served at one time or another with the 9th Glasgow Highland Battalion.
On July 14th, 1916, the Glasgow Highlanders were forced to dig in overnight near Highwood on the Somme, after a failed advance towards German positions they believed had already been cleared.
On the following morning, on July the 15th, the Glasgow Highlanders were ordered to advance again to the position that they were supposed to have reached the previous evening. Again being told that Highwood by this time had been taken from the Germans by other units of the British Army. But again, quickly discovered as they moved through the eastern fringes of Highwood that this was not the case, and this time the devastating effect of the machine guns were all too clear. 192 Glasgow Highlanders were killed within a couple of hours on the morning of July the 15th, and that number included John Barber, who had played for Queen's Park before the war, before leaving to go and join Dundee and then Preston North End.
After Barber's death, the Lancashire Daily Post reported on the battle.
Though he more recently played for Dundee and Preston North End, his name will be more closely linked with the Queen's Park Club. Whatever the motive took him from Hampden, there can be no doubt his heart lay there always. A thorough young sportsman, he played the games as a sportsman should, and never made an enemy on the football field. John Barber met his death charging the enemy. George Dixon, the ex-Rangers reserve forward, was at his side in the charge when he fell, and he says the ex-Queen's Park boy died like a true and gallant soldier.
Among the Queen's players who survived the traumatic events of 1916 was Walter Coulter, who worked at Fairfield Shipyards on the Clyde.
On February the 17th of the following year, the Glasgow Highlanders had moved to the Arras sector, and Walter Coulter was awarded the Military Cross for his gallantry in leading a 25-man raiding team on a night raid on the German trench lines. And the citation at the time referred to the fact that he led his men with great dash, and the success of the raid was largely due to his personal coolness and initiative. In actual fact, Walter Coulter was the officer in charge of writing the official report of the actions, and he did not make any reference at all to his contribution. And it was only when his senior commanding officer then added notes on a later occasion that his name was brought into the equation.
Within 3 months of being awarded the Military Cross, Walter Coulter was shot and killed. His body was never recovered, and he is commemorated on the Arras Memorial in France. The Battle of Arras held significance for another Queen's Park player, Ralph Risk.
He was overtaken, I think, by Alan Morton, who played in the same position, which made it very difficult for my father to get very many games. But he was, I understand, very well known for one thing, which was his speed off the mark. There was an article in one of the evening papers in Glasgow when a commentator was summarising his career of football, and he talked about the greats of football, about Alan Morton and the others. And one of the things he wrote was, but of all the players I've ever known, the fastest person over 10 yards was a complete unknown from Queen's Park called Ralph Risk. But I sometimes think that comment may have been helpful to my father while he was in the trenches.
Just 6 days before Coulter's death, and only 8 miles away, Ralph Risk received the first of 2 military crosses.
It's quite a remarkable story. He wins the Military Cross not once, but twice, and he also obviously sees promotion as well. He goes from second lieutenant to lieutenant and then on to captain. I think the first Military Cross comes in the Arras Offensive 1917, and he leads a platoon during that offensive out to a kind of advanced forward position, and he holds that position under severe enemy fire, and he holds it until he's ordered to come back by his own superiors. And it's recognised, the individual bravery, but also the example that he leads to his men, and it's recognised by obviously the award of the Military Cross.
He never spoke about these things to me, but I remember on one occasion he talked about the fact that he was only frightened one particular time, and that was having to go down into some cellars below a chemical works, below a factory, where the Germans were hiding. And he claimed to have been petrified at that time. But at that stage, I think he was wounded on that occasion. A little bit of shrapnel hit his leg, and he was out of action for a spell. But that one figures in my memory most because I used to use his old army kilt, which he'd kept, and I used to wear it for years. And there was a hole opposite the leg, which he claimed was a bullet hole, but I think was probably that bit of shrapnel or a later moth.
Risk never returned to first-team football. He went on, however, to play a significant role in the club as an able administrator, who made cup finals and internationals a regular feature at the expanding Hampden Park, including the Scotland-England fixture of 1937, attended by 149,000 eager spectators, which remains to this day a European record for an international fixture.
In the post-war years, Ralph Risk gave invaluable service to the club, partly through his work in the committee and then in his 2 periods as club president in the 1930s. He was a man who gave great service to his country and also to Queen's Park. Ralph Risk, Eddie Garvey, Peter Moody and Walter Coulter were only 4 of a large number of Queen's Park men who distinguished themselves in the Great War. The project has continued, and in December 2016 we have identified a further 10 persons who served in the forces, bringing the total number to 226. Of those, 33 lost their lives and 193 survived. Of the 226, 11 were recognised for their bravery. 18 at least were wounded during the conflict. 4 became club president after the war, and 7 were capped for Scotland at full international level while Queen's Park players.
Among the 33 who did not return from the front was Eddie Garvey, Queen's Park's musician-in-chief and one of the club's finest pre-war players, whose promising career was cut short by enlistment and whose life, like that of many of his teammates, was cut short by the horror of war.
One of the aims of the Great War project was to make players and members of the club more aware of the events that happened 100 years ago. And the club arranged to take a party of youth and senior players, staff members and committee members to Pollock Country Park to view the First World War trenches in the park.
This is Digging In. It's a joint venture with Northlight Heritage, Glasgow Uni and Glasgow Council to kind of bring the trenches to life. With the Queen's Park boys, we started off giving them a wee overview of what the project's about. We talked to them about kind of the input that Queen's Park had during the war, how many fans and supporters they sent off to fight. We spoke to them about some of the kit and the equipment. We let one of the poor lads try on full combat equipment, what they would have worn on the first day they saw him. And then I walked them around the trench and we talked about stuff, and they got to ask questions about life in the trenches, about the equipment, about the hazards, and kind of we did our best to teach them what we could.
We had several players from Queen's Park who was involved in World War I, and they have a plaque over at the club, so we're finding out today about sort of the stuff they asked to do and required to do in the First World War, so it was interesting to hear some of the information.
This is called a fire bay, and this is where you would be on the front lines when you were fighting. You would sort of be sat in the bottom of the trench doing things. The sandbag parapet there would be a wee bit higher. The only time you'd be up on this fire step is when you were shooting the enemy or about to go over the top. You'd live most of your trench time down in this bit, sitting in the fire step, making food, playing cards, keeping your head down. During the daytime, you didn't actually do much unless there was a battle going on, because the daytime was when the enemy could see you. It's becoming one of those wars that's now out of living memory, but so many people were affected by it, so many people fought, were injured, so many died. It had a massive impact on the face of Europe. We need to do our best to try and keep the memory alive. Half of the adult male population of Scotland, many women as well, were serving in the military during the war, and it's something we shouldn't forget. Every family in Scotland was affected by it.
When I was younger, we didn't really cover this in school. It was more World War II. It was good today to find out about life in World War I.
Most common loss of life was to artillery. Nowadays we all seem to think it's machine guns. Machine guns cause a lot of damage when attacks went over the top and started attacking enemy trenches, but it was artillery. Artillery was going all the time. Millions and millions of shells were fired during the war, and it was high explosives, shrapnel shells and things. They caused the most casualties in the trenches.
If I had to go to war, I'd feel scared because I'd have my career ahead of me and I'd need to obviously give that up. Even if you've not got football, you've got other careers that you need to give up. It's quite an important part of the Queen's Park culture that many people did give up football to come to the war. It was a very high percentage of people from Queen's Park, so I think it's important to remember them.
Queen's Park is a very proud club, particularly proud in its history. It really supported its members, footballers at the time that went to fight in the war. It's very important that Queen's Park does remember that part of its history and continues to do so. This is a very good opportunity to let the players currently see what it was like back then for the players and understand what life was like.
Queen's Park are keen to encourage members and supporters of the club and also members of the general public to visit the Football in the Great War exhibition at the Scottish Football Museum in Hampden Park, which will run until November 2018. Displays in the exhibition include the Queen's Park Roll of Honour and also the DSO and Military Cross with bar lent to the museum by the Moody family and the Risk family. The Queen's Park and the Great War project will continue until November 2018, and the club is keen to encourage members of the public and members of the club to come forward with any information that they think may be of assistance in the project. Anyone wishing to contact the club to comment on the project or to provide information should write to the Secretary, Queen's Park Football Club, Hampden Park, Glasgow, G42 9BA, or email secretary@queensparkfc.co.uk.